Welcome to the Rooted Healing podcast, where we seek to deepen our kinship with the living world and with the great mystery that runs through us. This is a space where stories heal with words that weave us closer to our wild and daring natures, bringing together the expansive minds, topics, and ideas that help us heal, reimagine, and co-create the world we wish to thrive in.
Who are you to speak about ceremony? You are a human being. You are a spiritual being. And for me, I truly see the act of ceremony as something that is innate to everyone and everything. I think ceremony emulates all that is going around us. And for me, ceremony is synonymous with awareness. Because what are we doing when we enter a ceremony? We are becoming aware of all that is sacred around us.
Andrew Askaripour, also known as Fifth God, is a multidisciplinary creative and ceremonialist from Long Island, New York. With a strong passion for photography, record production, cinematography, health, and spirituality, and with a focus on projects and writings that carry themes of self-exploration, vulnerability, ancient wisdom, and self-development, Andrew seeks to depict and work with those who are radically striving for a greater sense of peace, not only within their own lives, but within their communities and relationships as well. Andrew is the host of the Masters of Ceremony podcast, where he merges the worlds of hip-hop, photography and film, ancient wisdom, plant medicine, and so much more in order to educate, inspire, and strengthen his human family. Andrew takes us through his path of ceremonial healing and apprenticeship, which he sometimes refers to as the Path of Remembrance, with such deep wisdom and the ability to articulate many things that I feel deeply passionate about expressing. For me, this conversation is a must listen, especially if you hear the calling to sit in ceremony, whether that's with plant medicines or not. Or whether you have already been immersed in these healing traditions, or even if this is the first time you're dropping into a conversation about the craft of ancient ceremony, listening to this episode is such a great way to tune into the power of these spaces and practices. We have a ceremonial healing gathering in a week's time, our soul medicine gathering, which I'm co-hosting, and I will definitely be sending this to everyone who is coming to join us to aid with their preparation and intention setting. He reminds us of the importance of ceremony being our birthright as human beings, the importance of elders and mentors and respecting those who came before us and who hold the wisdom of these traditions as elevated by their community. He also shares beautiful reflections on his recent vision quest and his evolutionary relationship with grandfather tobacco. There's a lot of nourishment in this episode, some really beautiful reminders, and I just hope you enjoy it, and welcome to the wonderful world of Andrew Askaripour, aka Fifth God. Andrew, it's absolutely amazing to have you here. It's just been such an honor to have you as a friend in my life since we met in Ecuador, and I feel like you're one of those friends that I've had in my life for more than one lifetime. So I'm really excited to hold this space with you and be in conversation and share some words. And I'm wondering if you could start us off with a prayer of intention, and then also guide us through your cultural background and how this and the many other places you've been impacted by shapes all of the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ronnie. It's so deeply appreciated, and I hope it's okay that I call you Ronnie on this podcast. What a beautiful way to start a conversation. I think this is the most ideal way I would like to start any sacred conversation, being mindful and expressing an intention through prayer of how we would like to conduct ourselves. Because for me, I think that many people in the spiritual community, or many people in general, when they hear the word prayer, they automatically assume that you're praying to a higher power or to something outside of yourself. But I truly have come to learn that prayer is also simply expressing yourself in a sacred manner to somebody else as well. So I would simply like to pray that during this conversation, the two of us can speak with mindfulness and with awareness of what is on our hearts, because I would really wish for those listening to this podcast to see both of our authenticities and really see that we're aiming to have this conversation in the hopes that it can improve somebody's life, or at least somebody's day. Because I know for myself, I have so many daily conversations with friends that I always wish were recorded, because I know they could be of help to somebody. So I simply pray that this conversation can flow in a way in which the two of us feel comfortable speaking from the heart and speaking about these beautiful topics that we both love so much and that have helped us both so much, in the hopes that somebody who is listening can receive it and that it may be medicine for them.
May it be so.
And your other question was regarding some of my background and what has led me to be who I am, something along those lines. I think what has led me to the point that I'm currently at today is, of course, so many things, but primarily the way I was raised. So in this moment, I'm recording from Sweden. I'll just say that. But originally, I'm from Long Island, New York, and I am the fifth son of two immigrant parents. My father is from Iran, and my mother is from Jamaica. And I believe growing up in New York, having two immigrant parents who were raised in radically different ways than I was, you know, both of them growing up on the countryside and the mountains and living in a way in which they still had to cook their food over open fires and go collect their water, and were very connected to the land more so, and living in a very non-modern way. I believe that instilled such a deep sense of gratitude for me growing up, knowing that all of the material things I had, and also all of the just safety and support and freedom to receive so many things that I wanted as a child, I knew that that was something to be grateful for, because I knew my parents grew up in such a radically different way. And for me, what I would say really shifted my life was coming full circle with that process of, you know, my parents successfully living the American dream, whatever that means, and moving away from, you know, these other countries that have, you know, so many difficulties. And me realizing that I actually was feeling a yearning to return back to the ancestral ways of living that my parents grew up in. You know, I started to reach a point in my late teens and early 20s where I actually was envious of some of the things that my parents grew up with that they probably took for granted, such as, you know, having to create fires all the time and cook your food that way, and having to go to the spring to collect your own water, and having to go into the forest to receive your medicine rather than go to a pharmacy. And, you know, of course, living in that manner is radically different and even more so difficult in some ways than in the way we're living today. But also, I was starting to realize that there were certain qualities that one has when they are raised closer to the land, when they live a much slower paced lifestyle. And I can feel that that was something that I wanted to return back to, so that I can move forward in my life as a man when I have my family in a way that integrates the two, that integrates the beauty of modern times with ancient traditions and practices and ways of living. So when I was having some of these interests and realizations and spiritual transformations around this age, I felt a deep call to begin traveling again. And of course, I was traveling pretty often throughout my childhood, going back and forth from Jamaica and the States and other places. But I knew as an adult, after I graduated college, that I wanted to go and travel to places and peoples who could help me remember this more ancestral way of living, connecting with the land, not being so reliant on the conveniences that we have around us in modern times. And more than that, truly, to feel more spiritually connected to everything around me. I wanted to travel to places that could provide me with that connection. So in 2016, I first traveled down to Ecuador, to the Andes. And for me, the mountains are like my home. That's where I feel at most peace. So to travel to the Andean mountain range was always a dream of mine. And I went there specifically for a plant medicine retreat, which not only exposed me to the beauty of so many different forms of ancient traditional work that occurs down in South America and elsewhere, but also just the beauty of what it really meant to receive the medicine of community. Simple things such as sitting around a fire, singing, praying, speaking. And for me, it's not that these things were new to me. They actually felt rather familiar, but the containers were new to me. The models of prayer and offering and divination and gathering felt like, wow, yes, this is for me what has been missing. And those experiences in Ecuador and the meeting of various friends and teachers led me down a path of study, research, and a seek of experiential knowledge, because I quickly began to learn that the path of attaining true wisdom is through direct experience and revelation, rather than simply only reading or receiving advice or guidance from an intermediary between you and the sacred, you know? So for me, that gave me the strength to delve deeper into certain topics and subjects that were always of immense importance to me, such as what does it really mean to pray? What does it really mean to connect to the sacred? What does it really mean to have a community that truly supports you and that is not focused on ego-driven desires, but is truly focused on healing the hearts of all of us during these very confusing times that we live in? So it was those travels and many, many other travels since then that connected me to what I would call my medicine family, that connected me to my elders, to my teachers, and to so many various practices that I have been accepted into and invited into to continue to learn from and offer for myself. So in a nutshell, that's a bit of what has led me to this moment now. Of course, there's only so much I can share in one spiel like that, but yeah.
Thank you for guiding me through that, because I really felt a visceral sense of the medicine that your parents brought with them to this new life, but also that tension between becoming modern and disconnecting from these old ways, which I feel like we've all been so displaced and disconnected from, the simple things of life and song and prayer and fire and the connection with water. So from here, shall we dive into the craft of ceremony? Because I've been in many different kinds of ceremonies, and I'm recognizing a little bit of myself, like, who are you to talk about ceremony? I feel like there's such wisdom in the etiquette and in the riverbanks that are created by the ceremonies that I know that we both have been involved in. And you, in many forms, are on the red road, the red path, doing your vision quests, aiming towards being in the sun dance. And do you want to describe your experience with these particular kinds of ceremonies, and then we can go into some of the teachings we've received from these spaces?
Okay, well, I think a great launching point of that question you propose is actually addressing that small self-critical voice that is asking you, who are you to speak about ceremony? And who are you to speak about ceremony? You are a human being. You are a spiritual being. And for me, I truly see the act of ceremony as something that is innate to everyone and everything. I think ceremony emulates all that is going around us. And for me, and I can only speak for myself because ceremony can be interpreted as many things, and it is by many people. But for me, ceremony is synonymous with awareness. Because what are we doing when we enter a ceremony? We are becoming aware of all that is sacred around us. We are being mindful that we are entering a space in which we are more sensitive, or our senses are heightened, where we understand that we are leaving mundane reality and stepping towards something that is more full of deserving our awareness. And for me, ceremony is a time, in no matter what fashion it's designed in, it's a time in which we can focus our arrow, as my teachers say, which is to say, to focus our aims on either what we want to release, what we're grateful for in the moment, or to alchemize and transform a current state that we're in. So with that being said, I just want to reiterate the fact that ceremony is something that is a birthright to us all as human beings. And with that understanding, we can clearly see why there are as many humans as there are on this planet. There are forms of ceremony and rituals and different practices. So I think for me, regarding not only the ceremonies that interest me at this point in my life, while also honoring the ceremonies that have interested me in other times of my life, that the specifics of the design of ceremony need not to be the focus all the time, I believe, because ceremony itself is based off of intention and the space you are setting and the awareness of your state as you enter that space. So yes, there are specific ceremonies that interest me, Andrew, immensely, and there are specific ceremonies and practices and ways of life that resonate with my specific personality that I have been fortunate enough to be accepted and invited into by people of those cultures, and also ceremonies of my own culture. And I am incredibly grateful for that, and also understanding that this is something that I've been really ruminating on for quite some time now, is the universality of ceremony itself, and how in so many different cultures, the core tenets of ceremony are the same. Gathering around a fire, community, authentic and vulnerable prayer, laying down offerings or libations, singing songs, dancing, releasing, the consumption of herbal remedies and sacred plant teachers, on and on and on. And that has been such an important realization for me, and that I really want to continue to reiterate to others, that ceremony is a birthright. It is something that we all have done for millennia to help us become aware of what needs to change, what needs to transform, to become aware of what we are grateful for in this moment, to be aware of where we are as spiritual beings in this universe. So that's what ceremony means to me, and I would love if you can help guide me and redirect me towards the other question you asked me, or what you asked me to speak on.
Oh no, thank you. That was such a beautiful answer. And yeah, I mean, when it comes to expressing and holding space in ceremonial work and doing that with complete authenticity and complete integrity, and getting the ego, getting the personified self out of the way just to be a vessel of healing. And yeah, do you have anything to stream off that?
The different forms of expression of ourselves regarding to ceremony. So when you speak in that way, when you ask that question, it makes me reflect on the fact that there are what I would consider to be elaborately designed ceremonies for specific results that we would like to achieve. And at the same time, there are also individualistic and spontaneous ceremonies in which we can express ourselves in a way in which we need to in that moment. So for me, again, being someone who at this point in my life is becoming aware of that I can only speak for myself, the form of expression that has most impacted my life is sitting within a container, a space, whether I have created that for myself or that I'm being guided through by an elder or a teacher. Sitting in a container in which I, A, feel safe and comfortable to express myself, and B, feel supported by those around me and held and seen in a way in which whatever I am expressing is recognized as being worthy. And for me, of course, there are practices I have that I do simply alone. And those are very powerful. Those are very healing. Those are very essential to my life. But for me, the form of expression that truly leaves the biggest positive impact on my life is that of gathering with community and being able to express myself in whatever medium that is and have a witness there to see that, to either support me, even to criticize me, even to challenge me, because that is how we receive more information about where we are. And for me, ceremony is a reflective encounter with the divine in which I can look into the mirror of myself and see where I am at this point in my life. And creating that container for ourselves and expressing ourselves openly and honestly is, for me, the way in which I can kind of, how would you say, gauge or get a fixing on what's working in my life, what's not working, what can be improved, what I'm grateful for, what needs to change. And, you know, maybe just to get a little bit more practical about the question you asked regarding these forms of self-expression, I think having a container in which we either have people there or we don't, but having a container in which we feel safe to express ourselves to others or directly to source allows us to, and allows me to, work through everything that I am working through as an adult, as a human being, as a man. Because in this life, I feel like we receive and acquire and carry so much of what is going on around us that we need a moment where we can sit, be silent, and eventually reflect and feel supported by others of what we're currently going through. So this is, you know, obviously done through prayer, through song, through dance, through some of the more elaborate traditions and ceremonies and rituals that you mentioned earlier, such as, a vision quest or praying with certain tools or instruments. And these things are universal to so many different cultures. And I think a part of my path, which I sometimes refer to as the path of remembrance, because we tend to forget so much of this, is that these practices and these tools just help us come back to ourselves. And it has helped me come back to a state of wholesome well-being that I so often slip out of. So I think understanding the importance of ceremony, of vulnerable expression, of sitting with community, family, elders, guides, I think understanding the importance of that would radically shift people's lives into understanding that, hey, like, you have a resource within you that you can participate with, that can assist the suffering that we all go through as human beings.
Can you go a little deeper into the importance of elders, mentors, and lineage, ancestral line in this work?
Sure. This is a topic of immense importance to me and my path in my life, because I feel as if there are many people who are stepping into this arena of leadership and of facilitating very powerful practices and ceremonies. And there are people who are doing this without the guidance of somebody who has walked the path a little bit longer than them, which I believe is the essential benefit that one receives through mentorship, through having an elder, through having a teacher who is not self-proclaimed but has been raised up by their own community as being a leader, a master, or just a general person who lives an ordinary life, who has more experience in this specific field. And I think this was a practice of the past that was so much more common than it is today. Just apprenticeship, mentorship, studying with an elder. I think we're living in a day and age in which, and I'm not excluding myself from any of this, I want to be clear about that. And it's my own personal path that has led me to this realization of the importance of mentorship and elderhood. But that we're living in a day and age in which so many people want to be recognized. They want to be seen. They want to offer something genuinely that may help others. And they jump into doing certain works or practices without receiving the basic foundation of the experiences needed in order to offer these services effectively. So for me, what you receive through mentorship, what you receive through connection with your grandparents or elders or whoever it is a lifeline of support. It is the most invaluable resource a young person has to ask questions and inquire with and say, hey, this is something I'm going through that's very difficult. Do you, someone who has more experience than me in this field, have any advice or suggestions? Or, hey, like, I'm making a mistake here in my life and I see that you do this thing correctly and efficiently. Can you teach me a little bit about your methods? To me, it has become so apparent on my path, the importance of this. And I think I've been fortunate enough to be raised in the same household as my grandmother. So I, from an early age, really began to appreciate what it meant to have that kind of resource in your immediate vicinity. And I have also seen, as I have stepped into different forms of ceremonial work and prayer and spaces, that are on the edge of to be honest, that can potentially be, I hesitate to say dangerous, but that you have to be mindful of. It's like if you love to go hiking, it may be a beautiful thing to go hiking, but it also can be something where you can slip off the mountain and fall down and hurt yourself. So although there's so much beauty, so much power, so much safety when done correctly within many of the ceremonies I'm interested in, there is also a sense of reverence, respect, awareness, and care one must have before stepping into positions of leadership regarding some of these offerings. And for me, the best way for one to learn how to properly offer themselves in that way, if that is what they wish to do, is to study with a teacher, somebody who they respect, somebody who they have vetted and have taken time to get to know, somebody who has been raised up by their own community and by people who you respect as well. And I say that point specifically because I think we're also living in a day and age in which so many people are positioning themselves on a pedestal and stating who they are, opposed to actually receiving that blessing from elders or from their community. So yeah, simply put, mentorship, connecting with elders, respecting those who came before us and those in which many traditions and specific ceremonies come from, spending time with those people, getting to learn the languages, getting to learn the songs, getting to really be in a position in which you have a mentor that's willing to answer questions. It's essential for the path of development and wisdom. And for me, I know for a fact I would not be who I am today, and I would not be where I am today if it weren't for the resources I have in the teachers and elders and friends that I have globally. So yeah, I can't understate the importance of mentorship in elders.
Oh, you articulated that so well, because it's a sort of grey zone that I ask many questions within when it comes to space holders and ceremony. And yeah, you spoke to that so beautifully. Thank you. Without wanting to water down the experience or simplify what is obviously a very profound process, would you like to share a little bit around your vision quest?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. And it's not something that at this point I have truly publicly shared or spoken about. It's something that I've shared with many people in my immediate circle, but it's not something I've been so quick to share on social media or any other platform I've been on. But I truly see it as something that I want to share more of. And with that understanding that there's so many things that we go through as human beings that are so personal to us that we just want to hold on to because they're so sacred. And I honor and respect that. And that is the way in which I live my life mostly. But there are also aspects of my own journey that I know if I were to share pieces of them that I'm comfortable with sharing, that they would benefit many others. And for me, my experience on the mountain in Ecuador, my time at Sharakpamba, my time with Taita Alejo, my time in Vision Quest was so impactful for me that I am aware that sharing bits and pieces of that could be of benefit to others. So yes, of course, I would love to. The term Vision Quest has become specific to certain cultures' ways of fasting in nature alone. But I think it's important to note that the act of going into nature, sitting with yourself, fasting from food and water is a universal practice. There's no culture you look at that didn't have spiritual leaders guiding others through these kinds of experiences. I mean, it's in the Bible, it's in the Quran, it's in so many different traditional texts and histories of obviously going into a state and space in which you are not being distracted by anything other than your own mind, potentially. And for me, in the traditions that I have been welcomed into, it has manifested into the specific form of a vision quest that's specifically 4 nights and 4 days, and is held in a certain container, begins with a sweat lodge, ends with a sweat lodge. There's specific tools and items that are taken with you up into the mountain, and there's a specific preparation that one must do prior to the vision quest. There are specific prayers and intentions that you're setting for months or years prior to your first vision quest and subsequent ones. And for me, the entire process of preparing for my first vision quest was medicine enough. I could have never made it to the mountaintop, and I could have been radically transformed just by the preparatory actions of preparing for the quest. So to share a piece of that preparation in the traditions that I'm working within, you're guided to create a certain amount of prayers before going up the mountain. And these prayers are physically created through the act of placing a small pinch of tobacco, which is something we could speak about as well in this podcast, the sacredness of that beautiful teacher, but placing a pinch of tobacco into a small piece of fabric, tying that small piece of fabric to a string, and doing that hundreds of times with hundreds of prayers. There's a specific amount, etc. There's many details to all of this, which if you're interested in, you can take the steps you need to in order to learn the details of these ceremonies. But doing that, having to sit for months or years prior to your experience on the mountain, having to sit with that sacred tobacco and put an intention and a prayer into that fabric, tying that piece of cotton to the string, and doing that hundreds of times. And then subsequently, another purpose of this physical prayer is that those prayers, those pouches of tobacco, that string will serve as your circumference around the space in which you are sitting in for 4 nights. So when you finish this task of completing these hundreds of prayers, and you make it to the mountain, and the elder, the guide who is leading you through the vision quest, unravels this rope that has all these prayers, and you're sitting within this, maybe 10-foot radius, you know that you are sitting within the vibration of all of these beautiful, meaningful, personal prayers. And for me, that practice speaks to the genius of indigenous peoples of creating that psychological and spiritual and physical understanding of safety and protection, and reminding you of your intentions during your vision quest. So I illuminate and share that process of the preparatory stages, because that practice alone of having to create hundreds of prayers and meditate on what I would like to receive in the coming years and what I would like to express gratitude for, that experience alone was transformative for my life, and also humbled me to the fact that there are so many things we can do in our everyday lives that don't have to be an ayahuasca ceremony. They don't have to be a vision quest. They don't have to be et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could simply do powerful things such as creating prayer ties like that, and that could change your life. So I'm happy to share that with you, and I'm also happy to share that my time on the mountain, this is a tradition in which, at least within the lineage that I'm working within, in which you don't have access to water. There are many vision fasts where people do bring water. There's even some where people have emergency food, or they have their cell phone just in case, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not judging any of that. But within the traditions and lineage that I have been welcomed into, you don't have anything other than the clothes on your back, a couple blankets, and if you're lucky, the elder will allow you a tarp or something to cover you in case it rains. And for me, going up the mountain in that way, and also understanding that there would be nobody checking up on me, and being settled into such a remote landscape in which there's snakes and spiders and pumas potentially, and all types of different animals that could approach you, and that you have no one checking up on you until the time is over. Understanding and knowing that creates, I think, the closest container one can get to really being with yourself, and being forced to sit with your own thoughts and be held by nature and face many things in your life that you don't get a chance to really address due to always being able to be distracted by social media, by movies, by friends and music and family, and everything that life has to offer us. When you step into that state of vision quest in which you are on the mountain, you are nestled within your prayers, all you have is a blanket and a tree you're placed under, and you're exposed to the elements. It awakens something within you that I don't believe can be actually brought out in so many other ways. I do believe there are other ways, but for me, it was very unique to be in that position and to feel the things I felt during those 4 nights on the mountain. And another aspect I'll share about the specific form of vision quest that I participate in is that you have an elder and maybe others as well who are supporting the vision quest down at a base camp area. It's either the home of the elder, or it's the sacred ceremonial site of that space. And you have people who are holding a fire for you for the entirety of your time on the mountain. And every time they eat food, every time they drink water, they are offering food and water to the fire for you. They may also sing songs. They may also share prayers. And you know that they are there supporting you and praying for you. They also either drum or sound a conch shell at every sunrise and every sunset, where they call in the 7 directions. And usually you are situated in a space in which you can hear the call that they are doing to the directions every morning and every evening. And if they decide to drum on the big drum, you hear them singing for you, you hear them praying for you. And for me, that's what makes the difference between the tradition of vision quest that I participate in and just simply going out into the wilderness by yourself, which I think is as well very powerful, very beautiful, very transformative, something that I want to do more of myself. But the unique container of knowing that you have an elder who is guided, or a series of elders who have guided potentially hundreds of people through this experience and are praying for you and are holding that container for you. For me, that was one of the most special aspects of my vision quest. And it's really what helped me sustain to stay on the mountain the whole time, because you're free to leave. You're free to come down at any point you want, and you're not discouraged to. Your elders say, you make the decision to stay on the mountain. You also make the decision of deciding what to bring up with you, because of course, if somebody wanted to, they could sneak a chocolate bar up there with them. They could sneak an iPad. You're not being patted down before you're going up on the mountain. But something that one of my elders said to me, and said to actually others within the group as I was preparing for my vision quest, is that you only cheat yourself when you're on the mountain, because what you may think others are not seeing and that you're getting away with, it's obvious that the Great Spirit, our Creator, witnesses that. And beyond even Creator witnessing that, you know in your heart what you are doing. You know that you are evading your commitment and responsibility that you made going up on the mountain. So for me, the design and complexity and intention that has been placed into the creation of a ritual such as Vision Quest is just so empowering. It's so radically transformative for one's psyche and mind, and just to really get down to brass tacks of something I received on my Vision Quest is there's many things that are personal that I'm going to keep personal, but one thing I know that I received was a further understanding of how sacred water really is. Because I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I was so thirsty and struggled and really needed water, because I didn't have as much difficulty with the not drinking aspect that I thought I would. But nonetheless, I was shown the importance and sacredness of water in the deepest of ways. There was a night where I had a lot of difficulty. It was dark. It was actually very hot because there were so many mosquitoes. It wasn't necessarily hot outside, but I had covered all of my skin with, socks and my sweater and big jacket and thick pants and under the blankets because, the mosquitoes couldn't get me there. I was so hot. I was uncomfortable. I didn't have the best night of sleep. You're just sleeping on the bare ground. And I had finally made it through the night and had woke up and, was hearing the birds and feeling, the disorientation you feel by, the second or third day, and was just observing my space. And there was a huge agave cactus in my space. And I could see right on the edge of one of the leaves of the cactus that there had been some morning dew that had collected right on the tip. And it was probably only a drop of water that had acquired on the tip. And as I've been guided, it's from my understanding, it is not cheating. It is not evading your commitment. If there is something in your space, such as a drop of water or something that, has collected naturally, from my understanding, it is your choice to engage into consuming what is within your space. And for me, I knew I didn't have a bucket of water that was collecting the whole time or something. But when I saw this drop of dew that had collected on this cactus, I felt so compelled to just lick it, because as anyone who knows, the agave cactus is very broad and flat. It's like an aloe leaf, so you don't pose any risk of hurting yourself by licking it. And I had just put my tongue on this single drop of water, and I promise you, Ronnie, that single drop of water sustained me for the rest of the time. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't only something that was metaphorical or symbolic, it was literal. I physically felt nourished by that single drop of water. And for me, that drove home an understanding that I thought I truly knew and understood. Because, I'm someone who does a water prayer nearly every morning for the past 4 years now. I'm someone who has sat for hours in ceremony where the teachers and elders are praying over the water for 2 hours. And, I'm someone who has educated myself on the sacredness of water in so many different ways. But I didn't quite understand experientially until that moment how sacred that resource is. And I wouldn't have received that teaching without being guided by my elders into this process of Vision Quest. So those are some things I'm happy to share with you regarding that process.
Oh, thank you so much. I was right there with you Wow.
Hmm.
Well, I know that tobacco has been a really poignant, sacred plant medicine for you, and there's been a deepening, and it's been a big part of this path of remembrance that you're treading. Would you like to share a bit about your process with this plant?
Yeah, sure. And I think beyond any plant on this planet, I think tobacco may hold the most controversial views, actually. Even beyond like certain other things that people would consider drugs. I feel like it's become so misinterpreted and so commodified into the point where I know certain people are going to be listening to this podcast and say, what, like tobacco's sacred, like tobacco's a medicine. I think most people, specifically in the West, they would be shocked to hear that people use tobacco as a medicine, as a vessel for sharing their thoughts and prayers, as an offering to the land, as a meditative tool and guide. And they would certainly think you're crazy by anthropomorphizing tobacco into saying that it is even a grandfather, as I have come to know it as grandfather tobacco. And I think that's sad, but to be expected, because this is a substance, this is a spirit, this is a plant that has been so misrepresented since the Americas being colonized. And for me, simply put, when I first started traveling down to South America and engaging in some of these more traditional ceremonial practices that the elders that I have connected with and the families I have connected with do, I was quickly educated on how tobacco serves as what some would say the most foremost plant teacher within many native cultures of the Americas. Many elders will say that tobacco is the first medicine. It is the medicine that opens. It is the medicine that closes. It is the medicine that allows us to transform our intentions and thoughts and prayers into more of a psychic substance that could be sent to our ancestors, that could be sent to spirits, that could be sent to the nature around us. And there are a plethora of myths and creation stories and ancient teachings that showcase the different ways in which tobacco works. But essentially, indigenous peoples of all over, and you could look into the use of tobacco in Asia and Africa and other places as well, it is used as a form of sitting with oneself and communing with the divine via a teacher and substance that can transport one's intentions, that can amplify what one is currently processing or expressing. So, for example, in any ceremony that I am a part of, any ceremony that I have been a part of, a tobacco may open the space. And it's not only a moment of expressing intention, but it's a moment of understanding that tobacco itself is a powerful plant teacher that has an entire set of wisdom and teachings and power associated with it, beyond even the physical aspect of it, because we can speak about some of the science and spiritual understandings of what tobacco is doing to you as you meet with it. But for me, I have come to see it as a tool and a resource and a guide and teacher that can allow you to be more mindful of what you are thinking and what you are expressing in a ceremonial space. So in the way in which I've been taught, when you are holding a tobacco, whether it is a rolled tobacco, whether it's in a corn husk, whether it's in a sacred pipe, you must be incredibly mindful of not only what you think, but especially of what you say. Because it is taught by the elders that when you are carrying a tobacco, when that tobacco is lit, when you are praying with that tobacco, that you are speaking directly to divine source. You are being heard directly, not only by Creator, but by everything that is alive around you. Nature, the spiritual unseen realms, those around you. And you are amplifying your vibration when you hold that tobacco. And this is the way in which I have come to understand the power of this medicine and of this teacher. And there are other forms of using this medicine. There are, ways of receiving it by nasal delivery of, the different snuffs and rapes that are out there. There's liquid tobacco. There's ways of using tobacco as a cleansing mechanism through the smoke of the tobacco being blown onto a recipient. And for me, cultivating this relationship with Grandfather Tobacco, I think truly, and I don't say this lightly, I think it's impacted my everyday life more than any other plant medicine that I have engaged in. Because Grandfather Tobacco is so generous and accessible and so present, can become so present within one's life when that relationship is formed authentically, to the point where there have been moments where, I may be in a deep disarray about something that's happening in my immediate surroundings or in my life. And, breathing doesn't help me, or meditating doesn't help me. But in the way in which I've been taught by my teachers and elders, I know that if I simply sit with tobacco, and I don't mean to always smoke it, but to simply sit with it and meet with that spirit, that it can bring me immense comfort and ease. And for those who may be listening who want to know other aspects of this amazing medicine, of course, there's the neurotropic effect. There's the cognitive increase and focus that occurs through consuming tobacco. There's a plethora of actual medicinal, advantageous benefits from consuming this plant respectfully. But I say that with immense focus, respectfully, because this is one of the most powerful plants that exist, that Creator has given us, that if you disrespect the sacredness of this teacher, you can be burned, you can be harmed, you can be punished, for lack of a better word, because it is like playing with fire. It is something that demands respect. The elders teach again that this is the first medicine for many Native peoples. It is the first form of prayer. And I think in the West, we can see very clearly how much this medicine has been abused, to the point where people would probably think you and I are crazy to be speaking about tobacco as a medicine. And we can see, many times people will run and smoke a cigarette in times of stress, in times of anguish, in times of anxiety. And imagine, after hearing everything I just shared about tobacco, about the power of it amplifying your vibration, it hurts me to see people treating this native plant in that way, because I know how much it's revered and held with respect by those who carry these traditions. And I also know how harmful that can be for somebody to be essentially, they're praying without knowing they're praying, and putting things out there that maybe they don't actually want to receive in their life. And I think it's pretty obvious as well that we know what people think is tobacco is really tobacco plus 400 other chemicals, which is also just a whole nother topic to discuss. So yeah, for me, I'm someone who understands the utility and purpose of what tobacco represents to Native peoples all over the globe and to myself. And I'm someone who also understands that it's something people need to be educated on more so. And it's not something that I'm, force upon everyone, or that I think everyone needs to learn the right relationship with tobacco. But for those who abuse this plant, I think it's essential information to actually learn more about the traditional and historical reasons of using this plant.
Yes, and you see that happening with so many sacred plants to indigenous peoples. I'm thinking of the coca leaf and how sacred that is in the Andes in Peru and Bolivia and beyond, and how obviously that's the plant that gets turned into cocaine. And
Yep.
these plants that are being taken, it is an act of colonization. We're taking these plants, turning them into recreational drugs with chemical, an extremely harmful process.
Yes.
And in a way, this abuse of the plant and abuse of the spiritual connection, and taking the plant so far away from its lands and so far away from these traditions and its integrity, almost does carry this deep curse, because you see the immense suffering that comes from these disconnected practices.
Yes.
And those are just two plants. I'm sure there's many, many plants we can example here. And sometimes I even think, gosh, like some of the tea drinking culture in the UK and how much we stew the drink. Because I went and had some Chinese food yesterday with this woman called Ying, who is just the most incredible cook. And the way she taught me through it was essentially a tea ceremony, I realized, gosh, wow, this really is the way you're supposed to drink tea. And it's just in the hot water just for 3 seconds before you're drinking in. You're really in touch with the plant and the flavors. And anyway,
Yes.
Going down a bit of a tangent with that one, but
I know, it's beautiful.
Yeah, to wind us back, I'm absolutely loving what you're sharing. Wow, you're so good at communicating this. I'd love to check, kind of, because, rooted healing and the healing capacity of this path of remembrance, of ceremony, of ritual, of coming together in community. What has been your personal venture with these depths of healing, or any reflections you might have on how healing these practices can be? And in terms of reconnection and sometimes, physical ailments as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for that. And thank you just so much for the way you're carrying this conversation, because that is what is allowing us to flow and actually receive the blessing of the opening intention of this conversation. So thank you for that. For me, straight up, someone who has grown up on the standard American diet, which I think is also so ironic that acronym stands for SAD. As someone who grew up eating just like, being initiated into just like that average American diet that I think is caused by the stress that many immigrant parents have to live just to like provide food on the table. And like they're working, they need something convenient to make, or they need something convenient to leave in the home when they're away for you to make, and usually what's convenient is not the best for you. Being raised in a way in which my parents were cooking very healthy meals often, but as happens in most households, once a child gets a taste of that sugar, once a child gets a taste of those potato chips, it's like so hard to go back to eating like the healthy home cooked meals, And I bring this up because I'm someone who had a pretty unhealthy diet up until the age of 18, 19 years old, where I was eventually forced to change my diet due to so many illnesses and discomforts and poor state of health I was finding myself in. And I quickly saw that there was something emerging within me around the age of 19, in which I was having what I would later come to understand as some sort of a spiritual transformation. And on any spiritual path of progression and growth, it's obvious that the first step to take is to be mindful of what you consume. And of course, that means what you consume on a day-to-day basis mentally as well, what type of content you're consuming or what kind of things you're paying attention to. But I think first and foremost on the spiritual path, the first thing that is addressed is how you're treating yourself physically, what you're putting into your body, how you're moving your body, becoming more aware of the importance of the body. And in this moment of saying that, I know I have so many people who I love and so many people who I respect who truly say you have to discard the body. You have to understand you're just a spirit, you're a soul, you're an infinite being, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I would call like a half truth, because it's true, but you wouldn't be having the experiences you're having if you weren't in a body. So the body is essential to address and provide attention to. And I know I got to a point where I was realizing that there were ways that I was treating my body that were not in alignment any further with the way I wanted to live my life. And I first, just to make a long story short, I ended up changing my diet. I ended up getting healthy. I ended up educating myself on proper food and nutrition and nourishment and having so many life-changing transformations through that. But despite that, imagine 18, 19 years, 2 decades of not eating well. It's going to take some time to reverse some of those negative effects. And for me in my healing paths, especially going down to Ecuador, that was a part of my intention outside of like reconnecting with an ancestral remembrance or growing spiritually. Like there was a side of going down and participating in some of these ceremonies and consuming some of these plants in order to help heal some of the personal issues I was going through. One being massive indigestion, constipation, a lot of issues centering around digestion and elimination, which I think is very interesting because those areas of the body are attached to also holding on to emotions and not processing certain traumas or certain things that we've went through as children, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, the path that I have been on, outside of doing the fundamental things of changing one's diet and educating yourself on proper nutrition and nourishment and eating organic and eating local and understanding the power of the vibration that is within the food you eat, outside of all of that, a lot of this ceremonial work, and I'm not only speaking about the plant medicines, I'm speaking about ceremony in general, the way it benefited my healing path was allowing me to become aware. So remember I said earlier that I see ceremony as being synonymous with the word awareness. And for me, entering into some of these practices of where I can still the mind, I can receive support from others, I can see other people's experiences through their sharings, it provided me a deeper awareness into what my body wants, into what my spirit wants, into what I can do for myself that will provide me the biggest chance of improving my life. So for me, that's the benefit of my healing path, of working with ceremony and understanding that awareness is the first thing somebody needs when they want to change something in their life. And that's the advice. If I am going to give any advice to anybody, everybody's on their own personal path, but that's the advice I do give to people is coming into a higher level of awareness regarding yourself. And I think sometimes it's not always changing the food you eat. It's not always exercising more. Sometimes it's allowing yourself to sit down and just breathe and receive the wisdom that is innately within your heart that can guide you back into a state of well-being. And, I want to be very clear that I'm not someone who has mastered this. I'm not someone who has achieved, perfect health. Like I deal with sickness and, I deal with, not eating right sometimes still. I deal with, difficulties of being in a human vessel, of course. But for me, the act of ceremony, the act of prayer, the act of doing mindful activities that increase awareness is what always allows me to return back to a state of taking care of myself.
Mm. Oh, thank you for guiding us through that. And that for those, really vital reminders. Oh. So I would love to ask you, I sometimes ask people this at the end, just what, I think it's quite clear what your hopes and visions are, but feel free to make this personal or make this global or anything in between. What's your kind of prayer or vision or hopes that you'd like to plant into us so we may hold and expand these visions to round off this conversation?
Thank you for asking. For me, I can speak about, yes, my personal hopes and visions, and I can also speak about my collective hopes and visions. Mm-hmm. And for me, personally, I know since I was a young child that I want to be in positions in which I have an opportunity to live my life in a way in which it can improve everything around me, not just the people, but all of existence, all of life, all that is. And that's not with any tinge of like a savior complex or wanting to be someone who helps heal somebody or any. I've come to learn on my path that everyone is responsible for their own healing, for their own enlightenment. There is no man or woman who can do that work for you. So I'm not hoping to be in a position in which I am actively changing somebody's life for them, but I do recognize the awareness of where I'm being led on my path to help create environments and to help create an environment within myself in which the vibration I carry can positively impact somebody. Because I think as powerful beings, we need to become aware of how interconnected we all are and how much my state of being, my actions, my thoughts, my deeds, my words, how much they affect other people, other things. So my personal hope and vision for myself is to be able to live first in a way in which I am sustaining life and adding to life and adding to people's peace and being compassionate and being mindful of the judgments of the mind and the confusions of the ego and all these things. I want to be in a good place so that when people are around me, they at least feel safe and secure, not in danger. And I want to create environments in which people can feel that. I think that's one of the roles I feel as an aspiring ceremonialist. I want to create settings in which people can feel that way. And I want to do it with people. I'm being so mindful these years of understanding that I don't want to do any of this alone. The hopes and dreams and visions I have, I want to achieve them collectively with those who are willing to assist my vision. And I want to assist other people's visions. It's the whole reason why we're having this conversation today, right? So it's imperative for me to make sure that I am in a good state myself and that I can continue to be placed with the grace of God to be placed in a position to create environments and settings and spaces in which people can reconnect to themselves and identify what they need to do for themselves as well. So that is a personal vision of mine. And, I think the collective vision is that as well, is that people can really just step into whatever position they feel as if they are destined to sit within, that they can provide their own unique gift and teaching. And it doesn't need to be anything grand. I know some of the biggest influences on my life have been people who work the most regular, mundane job and do regular things, but they carry a certain energy. I think the most spiritual teachers are the ones who live the most ordinary lives. And I want to encourage people to understand that you don't need to have 10,000 followers on Instagram. You don't need to be like a shaman or be doing some like elaborate rituals in which you look cool and all this other nonsense. You being who you are, you doing what you feel propelled to do, as long as it is healthy for yourself and others, is enough. And that's the vision I would like to add to and also see become manifest in today's time.
Oh, thank you. I love that so much. I love the most spiritual teachers are the ones who live the most ordinary lives. That really resonates a lot for me. Can you share with us, to round off and close this beautiful conversation, about your podcast, Masters of Ceremony, and any of your other creative pursuits, and any thoughts on, like your music creation, and guide us to the wonderful world of Fifth God.
Thank you so much. And it's such a honor and pleasure to be able to be someone who expresses myself in so many different mediums. Even like you calling me Fifth God, there's gonna be people who are like, what? Who's that? Then there's other people who know who that is, and that's my artist name from my history of making music and video productions and such. But for me, Masters of Ceremony is my podcast, and the name comes as a double meaning. It's kind of a play on words, because being someone who's been so influenced by hip hop culture, hip hop being the first spiritual practice of my life, and understanding that, back in the day, rappers were called MCs, and that MC stood for Master of Ceremonies, which is a much older, ancient role in times of antiquity. Me like wanting to interview different musicians and interview different prominent people of the hip hop sphere, the name made sense to me in that sense, and then it also made so much sense to me regarding all of this ceremonial work I've been doing for the almost the past decade, and all of the wise people who I know I have access to, who can speak so eloquently about the intricacies of the things that they offer. And I want to be clear that, the podcast isn't a podcast in which you need to be a master of what you do. That's just a good name for the podcast. Simple as that resonates with like who I am. But yeah, that's my platform in which I interview people of interest who I think should be receiving more recognition, and who I simply want to have a beautiful conversation with that I can document and share with others. So that's what Masters of Ceremony is. I also work in music. I spent 5 years producing a hip hop album called The Fifth Tape, and that's out on streaming platforms. You can just Google it and find it, or find it in the show notes. I'm deeply entrenched into the realm of music production and helping, different friends and artists with all of their different creations. I love being a record producer. I went to school for audio engineering. I love that side of it all. I also do video and photography, as you know, which I would say is like the foremost form of how I've been expressing myself, let's say in a digital means, is through my photography and through my video. And it's been such a blessing to be able to merge these passions of ceremonial work and my travels with like the photography and the video, which if you go on my website, fifthgod.com, you can see just some of those photos. But in the coming years, I really hope to produce more visual content regarding some of my own personal travels and journeys, but also the peoples I work with, my elders, my teachers, and shed light on what they're doing, because I want to take a moment to say I wouldn't be who I am and where I am without many of my teachers down specifically in Ecuador. So the entire Hayulima family and everyone else down there, I really want to help continue to showcase a lot of the beautiful work that's going on, not only by that family, but also by like you and all my other friends. Like I want to use the gift that I've been blessed with regarding like photography and video and audio engineering. I want to use all these tools to coalesce my purpose into one package. So yeah, whoever's interested, they can Google my name and see whatever I got out there, and they can check out Masters of Ceremony. You could check out my video and photo work, and that's something I hope to share more of in the coming years.
Yes, I'll definitely be linking everything in the show notes. And just thank you so much. I really feel the medicine of everything that you've been sharing, and I can't wait to listen back through this again. And thank you so much for staying calm, inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh, and despite the immense Mercury retrograde tech issues we've had during this conversation.
Yes, let me give thanks to Thich Nhat Hanh publicly for allowing me to feel so calm and centered by returning to his teachings since he's physically passed. And I pray that all those who are listening to this, whenever you are, that you can, return to the simple reminders of life, that all we need is our breath, all we need is prayer, all we need is community to come back to ourselves. And I thank you so much, Ronnie, for allowing me the opportunity to share some of myself here, and for all the work that you do, and for this amazing podcast that you're producing, and also all the other unseen work that I know you're offering that people really appreciate. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend, as a sister, and I'm always praying for you. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. You can keep an eye out for Andrew's incredible words, insights, and facilitation with us at Rooted Healing, and find his work, including the Masters of Ceremony podcast, which is on the main listing platforms, at fifthgod.com. And you can find Andrew on Instagram at fifthgod also. All links are in the show notes, and if you are enjoying this show, I really encourage you to head over to our Patreon page and check out the offerings that we are carefully curating as a thank you for becoming a patron for this show. You can join from £1 a month, which gives you access to everything we are sharing over there. And it's evolving into a beautiful space of learning, sharing, and expansion into the topics and themes in this show. So if you're called to deepen this journey and deepen your kinship with life, you can support your own journey for, £1 a month at patreon.com/rootedhealing. This summer solstice, we have a magical and intimate gathering in Dorset, England, which is a journey of transformation and rebirth as we rewild ourselves with movement, song, ceremony, ritual, forest bathing, drum making, exploring, and creative expression, and just so much more. So come and celebrate this beautiful portal from the 17th to the 22nd of June. And you can find out more at rootedhealing.org/summer solstice. I'm your host, Veronica Stanwell. Thank you for being here and taking these stories in. Please don't forget to rate the show and maybe even leave us a review, as this really helps the medicine of these conversations reach more people.